Okay, welcome, Alan. So, Alan Levy, you're from Alchemy Works. You're the CEO and founder, and thank you for joining me on our call today.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks so much for having me, and appreciate being here and you taking the time on a Friday to get together.
The best things happen on Fridays. I'm from the Marketing Accountability Council, and we have a Friday 3 p.m. call, and it strangely is the time where most people can attend because they're not doing other stuff and they actually choose to be with us. But I wanted to get to know you a little bit before we dive in. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your journey?
Sure. My pleasure. So I started Alchemy, Alan Levy, CEO and founder. I started Alchemy Works in 2007. Prior to that, I got into the broader digital marketing industry and lead generation back in 2000, in the early years of the internet. And my background prior to that was actually retail wholesale. I had founded a couple of companies in the retail and wholesale industry. But when we're talking about marketing and responsible marketing, there's been a little bit of an evolution, fortunately, towards slightly more responsible marketing over the last 25 years. It's got a ways to go, but I will tell you that when I started, it was pre-canned spam, and there were a lot of direct marketers who came out of the direct marketing industry, selling postcards and trying to get people to dial 800 numbers and be really aggressive tactics. Canned spam did clean up a fair amount of those, and around, I think it was 2003 or 2004 that was enacted, and it woke people up to be slightly more responsible.
Slightly, you said slightly twice.
Yeah, because I see the work that you're doing, Jay, and I know the work that and clearly there's the litigation we're going to speak to in a couple of minutes. If they had been fully responsible, there wouldn't be the cause for litigation. But as a direct marketer and a lead gen in the lead gen business, I saw an opportunity in 2007 for retailers to become more creative in their approach to marketing, and more targeted, better segmenting. And as you are better at speaking to the customer in the right language, you don't need to use false language to get everybody in, right? Everybody wants something for free. If that's, that will get you to be interested in engaging in something that you probably aren't interested in. But if I'm a good marketer, I'm going to find out what you really want and maybe frame it in a way to give it to you, not for free, but at a value to you. And whether that value is enhanced service with it or, a gift with it or something else, there's a better way to do it through better targeted marketing.
That sounds good. Before we get into anything else, I'm curious. I haven't done the whole LinkedIn yet with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your education, your background, and sort of how you come at marketing? Like, what did you study? Like, what's your interest in marketing?
So I studied marketing in school. That's only because the school I went to didn't have a business program. I went to Brooklyn College, and the closest I could get to business was to study marketing. But I was fortunate. I was fortunate that my job while I was in school was in sales. I was working for an apparel company, and I started out in sales, and the company that I worked for grew from 40 million to $1 billion over the course of the 9 years that I was there. And I literally just held on like this. When I say held on to the growth, not held on for my job, but I was consistently given more responsibility. At the age of 24, I was sales manager. At the age of 26, I was director of international marketing, and launching the business around the world. And this was a company at the forefront of discount apparel. I remember a survey back in the mid 80s that said that about 19% of all apparel was bought through discount stores. Today, it's probably 90% if you count Amazon as a discount store. But back then, it was only 19%. And the company I was working for it was Gitano Jeans, did a
Oh,
phenomenal job of marketing their product, whereas most product that was sold through most apparel product was unbranded product. So Gitano did a good job of doing a little bit of marketing of their product, great PR, and really good exposure so that the consumer in that discount store felt they were getting a value because it was a branded product versus an unbranded pair of jeans. So they could charge a little bit more, but more so get more sales. So that was my first exposure to marketing. And then as I launched the brand myself, as part of the company in Canada, I had to learn marketing 101, take what worked there, adapt it for the markets, and then we did the same in Latin America and other places. So that was my education into marketing, hands-on in the apparel industry. After launching, selling several companies in 1999, I had decided I wanted to get involved in the internet. I was kind
no,
of looking.
good timing.
It was an objective of mine to learn how to build a business, raise money, and build a business, other than just friends and family or a partner, and grow something big. And I was fortunate enough to I was fortunate enough to be naive enough to know that I had as much experience. I had more experience in business than most other internet entrepreneurs at the time. And the most anybody could possibly have in running an internet company was 4 or 5 years, because at that point there were no internet companies prior to that. So I took a shot. We grew our lead gen business to a point where we were generating a couple 100,000 names a day for visitors to our sites and captures a day. And email was the channel of preference. We did a lot of testing, what's resonating, what's not resonating, audience segmentation, and we grew that business. And then in 2007, I made a decision to start what's the predecessor to Alchemy, Sell-Up Inc. And the reason was retailers weren't doing the type of targeting that I believe they could. Our first client was ELF Cosmetics, ELF Cosmetics.
Yeah, eyes, lips, face.
Eyes, lips, face.
I taught at FIT. I know this stuff.
Okay, so you know this stuff. Alan and Joey Sham are good friends of mine. Alan's the father, Joey is the son, and they had this $5 million business all in. Digital was $1 million, offline was $4 million, and they were, looking for help to grow it. I looked at the business, said, guys, I'll come in, I'll help you, as an agent, I'll run your email for you. In the first year, we took email from 400,000 to 2 million. And then we just they continued to grow the business. And fortuitously, I stayed with them as they stayed with me as a client up until I think 2017, 2019. The founders exited, but we stayed on. Interestingly enough, they founded or bought a handful of other brands. They're currently going under AF Beauty. They own Laura Geller, Julep, Mally, Bliss Spa, and Cover FX. And we've been their AOR since they started those companies. And that's one thing I will tell you about Alchemy is we've kept a great relationship, and we've continued to grow with our clients. I've got clients that have been with us for 6, 7, 8 years. Universal Music Group, Sirius XM, just to name a few, that just they can't shake us. We work really, really hard to do right by them and help them grow their businesses.
You seem like a modest man, but is it true that you're like the godfather of email marketing?
I don't think I'm the godfather of
not the godfather. Maybe that's the wrong term, but I think you ushered in. You came in at the beginning, and you started Godfather. Sorry about that word, but
No, I don't
you
take it
rushed,
in a bad. I don't take it in a bad term.
yeah,
You know, I'm
not in the mafia kind of way, but like, but what I'm saying is that you started at the beginning. You actually started before the beginning.
Mhm.
And then you started to establish best practices out of necessity. And you did it on the fly through a lot of trial and error and iteration. Is that true?
Yes, I would, yes, I would agree to that. And I've been fortunate also to have built a really, really good team of smart people.
Uh-huh.
We've got about 130 people on our team, you know, in the company. And so some of them have been around and in the industry for, I wouldn't say that long, as I have, but for a number of years, 10, 15 years, and know it really, really well. And we all think the same. You know, how do we get the most for our customer, the most efficient manner, and really help them, you know, pull the most sales out of their database. And that's
Sounds good.
and
And
with, go
yeah,
ahead.
that's where we're leading. And so I'm really, the context is very helpful because you shared with me a case about Old Navy. That case sort of talks about the pitfalls of subject lines and promises that are delivered via email. My interest is really fathering in a new era of marketing that is marketing accountability. What does that mean? There's an upward trend. The word accountability on Google Trends is at 100. Not related to marketing, related to just the idea that accountability is important and essential. And I'm riding a wave with this organization that I've established. And I really believe that something's got to give because consumers, marketers, just people surrounding our industry are no longer believing the BS that is coming out of marketers' mouths. And as marketers, like, you know, you're a company, you work for a company and they say, you know what? Hey, marketer, we shrunk our package in half. Make it sound good. Oh, it's the skinny version. Okay, you know, but how many people believe that? I have a friend that went to a sub shop and the sub was $9.99 and he's been buying this sub for years. And he noticed this time that there was probably like half of the meat. And you know, no one said anything about it. And it's like people start to smell this and it's smelling a little rotten. And that's what I'm after. So we look at companies and you know, Gap Inc. is notorious for the way that they do sales. The way it works is when stuff is 40% off, they give you a coupon. And then they switch all the prices to not being 40% off when the coupon can be used. And you always go into the Gap with the expectation, or any of their other stores, with the expectation that you're going to be getting a discount. But it appears that they got into trouble with some of their discounting language. So why don't you give us a little bit of a summary of what happened?
So I'll start with, in order to be effective as a direct marketer, you need some type of lever, and that lever needs to be either urgency, right, or excitement, or something to pull somebody to make a decision now, right? Why should I make this decision now? It's a white T-shirt. Why do I need to buy white T-shirts today? I have enough white T-shirts in my closet. Oh, they're on sale. Oh, okay, that sale's going to go away. There's a level, there's urgency and there's scarcity, right? So the scarcity is that sale will disappear, right? New arrivals, get them while we still have your size, right? That's a level of scarcity. So some level of scarcity or excitement.
Or there's the other option, which really upset me when I got this ad. It's you have man boobs and our white T-shirt will make it look like you don't. That's not scarcity. That's effective target marketing. And by the way, I'm fine. But
yeah, you look fine. You look
yeah,
fine.
but I mean, I was upset that I was targeted in that way. But the other thing to do besides scarcity is like this product knows me so well, or in that case, it didn't, that it's now appearing. It's like, wow, is that true? Maybe I do need this shirt, right? So anyway, so you have some sort of scarcity or some
They
sort of thing.
got your attention, right?
Got my attention.
That is a good thing, but maybe
Right.
not the right way.
Not
They
the right
may have
attention.
unsubscribed,
Yeah.
but so it's so important, especially in a subject line, but even in the content of the email, to be true. Because, we all know the old story, the boy who cried wolf. The third time, fourth time, when the wolf is really there, nobody's going to believe you. So, as you said, Gap Inc., for years and years has been running this. And I don't know anybody who is going to go buy from the Gap and walk in and pay full price for a product at without a discount when it's not on sale. Like, why do that? And so I think they've created this problem. On the other side of this is a company like Walmart, which very rarely does anything other than price rollbacks, right? So there's no coupons, no discounts, but they go out at a tight margin, and they're true. And you look at the growth of Walmart as a whole over the course of the last 30 years, and you can look at the growth of the Gap. It's kind of been up and down and had its challenges. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of retailers who followed the Gap and into that. And we're very, very careful with our clients in you can be aggressive in a subject line, but be honest, right? So if you want to say, oops, right? Oops, Jay, to get you to open the email, I must have an apology within that email for something, right? And it could be cute, right? It could be, Jay, we're really sorry. We know you love winter, but summer's on its way here. And you open that email and you grin, and you don't feel like you were tricked from the oops to the opening, because at least there was continuity. All right, they got me to open. That was kind of cute.
I could handle that if it's sincere. But I mean, in a world where I get 600 emails that are like an email from Old Navy or the Gap, and I'm not even inclined, how do you address that issue for a client?
How do I address, well, the challenge,
like separating yourself from like, let me be real about the Marketing Accountability Council. So I have like 500 subscribers. We're growing, right? But I regularly look at my analytics, and I often see, for example, the article I published this morning was opened 9 times by one individual. Okay, and that to me is a signal, right? But when you're looking at it from a commercial entity like Old Navy or a bigger entity, there's a very little percentage of, I don't even know what the percentage is of a typical open rate for a commercial retail. What would that be these days?
So open rate typically runs around 35 to 40%. That means 35 to 40% of the people theoretically opened it, but it's a false open rate. iOS switched the way that they read, and so about half of those, there's no precision, about half of those number are opens within that are automatically generated with somebody who's got an iPhone or any type of Apple device. So it automatically pulls that data in and sends a signal back that the email was opened, even if somebody didn't open the email.
Okay, that's good to know. And then based on that, how do you know when, and if you send 100 emails in a week, how do you know what's one that is outperforming and clearly better versus one that's worse?
So the metrics we look at are generally click. Did somebody engage with the email itself? And of course, did they make a purchase? Did they go through? If it's a retail email, we look for purchase engagement, or if it's something else, did they sign up, or did they take a subsequent action, sign up to a blog, or read more, or etc. But the two metrics we look at the most are going to be clicks or some type, engagement, which is clicks, and then we look at purchases. Opens is something only used as a leading indicator. If the opens fall apart, we probably have a deliverability issue. We didn't get it into the inbox, and if the opens skyrocket, maybe we did have a really, really good subject line. But whenever we look at a subject line, we look to see, did it get the clicks? Because if I had a really good subject line and I didn't get the clicks, then that was a misleading subject line, and we want to avoid that. The consumer opened the email but didn't click through. We didn't follow through on the promise, and we want to make sure that there's continuity between opens and clicks. There's not always going to be opens, clicks to purchases. They may have come to the website, their size wasn't their color, or something else.
Yeah, there's a whole the funnel doesn't look like this; it looks like this. It's like people experience something, they start to say, do I really need this? They're circling around, they might see a few more ads. I mean, email is a tactic within a whole suite of brand building and all that kind of stuff. So I would understand that if they didn't purchase at that given time.
Exactly. And by the way, very different transaction rates through open click to purchase for different types of products, right? A considered purchase like a television set or a refrigerator, you're going to do a lot of research before you make the purchase, and so you may click on a lot of ads before you buy one. Whereas if it's something it's an impulse buy, you may just click and quickly buy it. A cover for your iPhone or some interesting product that's inexpensive. You're gonna say, let me click. I don't have time to come back and do this. And
so I'm just gonna do it, especially if you have one of those things where it has the button like right in there and it's all good.
Exactly.
So before we move on, let's close the loop on this gap thing. So what was the problem in this Supreme Court of, I think, Washington case? Like
they extended the sale again and again. So last chance, this sale is ending, and then they extended the sale and they extended the sale. So if you said last chance, if the sale ends midnight Tuesday night, and then you extend the sale and it's Wednesday, and you say the sale is still on Wednesday, it's still on Thursday, there was no real end to the sale, and that was
no end to a sale at the Gap? Are you serious?
So the issue was that they falsely claimed that the sale was ending, where they had no intention of ending the sale.
It's interesting because I've learned that in states like New Jersey, like different states have different rules on this, and I think that some are stricter than others. So I think that's a baseline. As a marketer, you want to know that you're sort of it's a case study everyone knows that that's what the Gap does, and I'm glad that someone held them to account for that. So so now, we started to dive in a little bit to how you start to look at things. And when I was reviewing some of the materials that were shared with me, there were several case studies that you have that I'd like to go through. But one of the things that I noticed was instead of sending more emails, you sent less in some cases, and that resulted in more traction. And I've always believed that less is more. I know some people that believe more is more, but let's talk about that. Like, what is, how do you determine, how often to send, and what are the signals that you look at to make those campaigns?
So we look at who versus how often, right? So, and I'm going to use an old world experience. I don't know if shopping malls are still around anymore. I think most of them are turning into resorts and entertainment hubs. But if you think of it this way, the difference between somebody who walks into the shopping mall but doesn't walk to the second floor where the Gap is, we'll use the Gap as an example, doesn't walk to the Gap where the Gap is at all, right? They're a buyer, a consumer, right? We've identified that they go into the shopping mall, but they didn't even get near the Gap, versus somebody who walks past the Gap, pokes their head in the door, versus somebody who walks into the Gap, buys a handful of items, and then gets a call from the babysitter and runs out and doesn't buy those items, versus somebody who actually goes in, checks out, purchases something, and is a regular and loyal customer of the Gap, right? So if I'm the Gap and somehow I've got a counting of everybody who I can send a postcard, let's say, that's going to cost me $1, including mail and everything else, to reach every one of those tiers. There's a registration at the entrance of the mall. Am I going to spend $1? Am I going to spend as much money on the person who's bought from me every single month as I am on somebody who didn't even get up to the second floor of the mall? I'm going to spend more on my high value customer who's loyal. I'm going to spend the next level on somebody who just bought one time, but even a little bit less on somebody who never got to checkout, but there, and then less on somebody who poked their head in, and the least amount on somebody who just entered. And when I say spend, that's the same with email cadence, right? So if somebody is a high value, loyal customer, I know the most about them, I'm going to communicate the most with them, and I'm going to send them the most emails. And that's typically only about 10 to 15% of the list. It generally accounts for about 50% of the revenue, right? So 10%, 15%, maybe 20% of the list is your high value, loyal customers.
And you know that, and you know this, sorry to interrupt, but you know this because I put in my phone number and you're able to connect it with my name. So if I'm a part of either the credit
card,
your
email address,
or the email address. So it's an e-commerce thing, and we literally know how often you buy. This is not right. Because the retail store, it's much harder to do that.
Yeah, I use the real world example.
Okay, but so we're talking about emails. You know very specifically who the curve of people who's bought.
I know the curve of people. Reliable. Exactly. So these are the most frequent buyers who are in our database, who have come to the website, made purchases, multi-buyers, etc. I'm going to speak to them much more often, but I also have the luxury of being able to target them much better, right? And so I've got men's, women's, and children's clothing. I know this person has only purchased children's clothing from me. They may be female. I may have identified as female or something. I'm going to share some messaging around men's clothing and children's clothing because they should know I have it, maybe as a gift, maybe for significant other, maybe for whatever. But I'm going to continue focusing on the products that they've bought and the category and the size range. They've been buying little girls' clothing. I'm not going to send them little boys' clothing. Again, I'm going to be able to target much more. And that, to them, that content is going to become much more valuable to them because I'm showing them something that's of value versus something to somebody else who I have got very little information on. I don't want to talk to them as much. I want to talk to them only till I get them to at least engage in an email, click on an email. And once they click on an email, then I bring them in to learn a little bit more about them. So I because my highly valuable customer, I've got more information and I could speak to them much more personally. I'm going to speak to them much. I'm going to do that, but they're only 10% of my million name list. Use a very simple number. That's 100,000. Many brands make the mistake of saying, I'm going to speak to my entire million people once a day. No, I'm going to speak to my 100,000, maybe even maybe even 10 times a week. I've got a really good offer for them. I may tell them in the morning and in the afternoon about that offer. Don't miss out. But my other 900 get divided up into categories. There's another group that is purchased from me once. That's another hypothetically 200,000. That 200,000 is probably only going to get 6 messages a week versus 10. They're not going to get a follow-up and a reminder, but they're also going to get something targeted. But I'm less knowledgeable. Just because you bought, a black t-shirt from me, it doesn't mean you only wear black t-shirts, right? Unless I know
unless you're Mark Zuckerberg. Or Steve Jobs or whoever wears those shirts.
Right, exactly.
It also doesn't mean you don't have a whole universe of things. You don't know if they shop, where else they shop. You know the Gap.
Correct. But I do know if you've bought black t-shirts from me every single month on a regular basis, 3 black t-shirts a month, now you're multi-buyer, you're a high value, loyal customer. Now I have more information about you. But if you've only bought once, I don't have a lot of information about you. So I have to be more careful, and I shouldn't be messaging you as often.
Okay, so I want to ask you another question. So that's the use case for when you have access to the database. We're having our MAC call in less than an hour, and one of the hypotheses that we've been working on is that data brokers are really bad for the world, and that the way data is collected in this world is not good. Whether it comes from a large survey where people just click down the middle, or it's extracted in some way that someone didn't give permission for, et cetera, et cetera. Have you ever had an experience, and I'm sure you have, where you don't have access to the database and you're using the open markets data to try and come to some sort of hypothesis or conclusion? And how has that worked for you?
So we will use open market data to pull people out of a database, but not to pull people in. So when
Well, that's, I guess, against the law, right? They have to subscribe and opt in, right?
Well, no. So what I'll say is, we'll work with a client, and they'll say, okay, so now we have a database of 10 million records, right? These are people who signed up over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. I've got 10 million records. I know that 2 million of these records are active and engaged. The other 8 million, I only send them 2 or 3 times a year. They did sign up. Some of them even made purchases from us, but they haven't come to my website or opened an email in the last year, right? But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't ever talk to them again. So we'll turn around, we'll take that database of 8 million that they're not sure of, and then we'll go out, and there are services, list cleaning services, and we'll say, can you look at these records, and can you tell us who is currently active online somewhere else? Because if they're not, it's a burnt email address. They used it, they signed up, they signed up for Yahoo 4 years ago. I don't want to bother talking to them. And if they're not active online, it may just be an old AOL account that they're no longer using, and again, I want to pull those out. So we'll use those services to clean up a database, and then we'll be able to come back to our client and say, look, out of these 8 million records, only 3 million are worth even trying to talk to. Let's purge the other records, the other 5 million records. Don't even bother. And this way, at least your reputation is clean.
Okay, good. So that's a good use case for that. Okay, so in our last few minutes together, why don't we get into specifics? You want to give any examples of how Alchemy Works has like really supported a client to deliver on the promise and potential of email?
I'd love to. I think we were discussing offline easy contacts as one of our clients, and we're really proud of the work that we're doing. They've grown that business very nicely. They sell, other than just contact lenses, they sell glasses, and they were smart enough about 1.5 years ago to be able to do an online prescription for glasses, so they could cover the whole end-to-end transaction. And they sell sunglasses as well, and they've grown a nice database. We do market through both email and SMS for them, and we were able to really help them grow the business through both of those channels by identifying who is engaging and getting the right offers in front of those people. And it's very interesting, because if you think about it, people who wear contact lenses are a candidate for glasses and a candidate for sunglasses.
Absolutely.
People who wear sunglasses may not be a candidate for glasses or contact lenses, right? So there's good data in there based on what you've purchased, and there's cautious data. So just because you bought sunglasses, I should let you know that we sell glasses and contact lenses, just in case you do wear them, or your significant other does, or somebody else in your family does. But if you wear contact lenses, I've got a lot of information on you, and so I could make sure that if you've bought a 3-month supply, right before your supply runs out, I message you. You may be somebody who wears them infrequently, so I don't want to over message you. So there's a lot of data in there, and we were able to get the messaging right and do exactly as you say. You said before, bring down their overall frequency of messaging, but increase the revenue significantly by what we call audience management, managing to those audiences and pulling the funnel together, taking inactive people and getting them to engage in email, either to click on an email or visit the website, and then move up to make a purchase, and then move up to make a subsequent purchase. With SMS, which is different than email, it's a bit more intrusive, which means it's much more impactful. But you know what? I'm going to jump for a half a second only back to, responsible marketing. With SMS, you need to be responsible. There are laws in place that started out as telemarketing laws because people don't want to receive telemarketing at 5 a.m. or at 11 o'clock at night. So there's laws around when you can legally message people by, call them. And those laws have evolved to SMS. And it's very important to only send messages within a safe send time, and that safe send time by region, by time zone. So there are very good laws that help protect the consumer from being intruded on. And certain states also limit how many messages a day you can send, so that as a responsible marketer, you have to follow the laws which protect the consumers. But specifically with Easy Contacts and SMS, we were able to significantly grow their revenue with a smart and responsible SMS program, targeting their consumers with messages that resonated for them, and finding the right channel that applied for the right person.
I see what you're saying.
Thank you.
So that's great. And I think it's really interesting how you deconstructed that audience and sort of thought through the journey from that perspective, because I as a novice or someone who doesn't really think about eyeglasses or contacts, I didn't think through that contacts to glasses to sunglasses isn't the same as sunglasses to glasses to contacts. And I think that's the context, right? The context,
100%.
context is not optional. It has to be, there's a certain logic that you need to go by, right? And that's what every other tactic that you do follows that framework, right?
Yes. You have to be a smart marketer before you're a smart email marketer, right? You have to understand, generally put yourself in the consumer's seat, and say, if I were the consumer, put yourself in this consumer's shoes and say, if I were this consumer, how would I want to be marketed to? And that includes responsibility, right? Over messaging, there's a respect for the channel, right? There's a very different respect that we have for banner ads on websites and TV ads, right? The similar radio ads. But we also get annoyed if you're listening to a radio program or a podcast and you eventually find out that the 90% of it is ads. You're going to stop listening to the podcast, no matter how valuable the content is. You're like,
right.
It just
no, thank you. Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the channels, email and SMS. They have to be responsible. They're intrusive channels. They're push channels. There's something's coming into your inbox, and you don't want your inbox inundated with information that has no value to you. So it's really critical for marketers to be responsible.
Thank you. So no, I think that's great, and that's exactly what my message is, and that I think that's a good final word. I mean, unless you have anything else you like to say or close with.
No, I enjoyed this.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you very much.
Yeah, Alan, I mean, it was a pleasure, and I really do want to spend some more time with you sharing what we're up to, and because I'm a jack of all trades in the marketing world. I can touch everything, but I am not the kind of person that's going to go into the database and figure out those details. But as my business grows, and as I see those signals, like I told you about earlier, the person that reads my email 9 times, I need to know they've opted in to hear from me, but what does that mean? How do we engage them more? What is the conversion? And increasingly, that's going to be very important for the Marketing Accountability Council.
I'll be happy to help you in any way I can, Jay.
Okay, great. So, Alan, just remind us again about your company and where we can find you.
Alchemy Works, alchemyworks.com, WORX, and we're here to help people with any of their CRM, their digital CRM needs.
Hey, thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah. Let's hit stop record.